So let's get the top off this. It says to make note of the orientation of this as we take it apart. So what I'm going to do, these screws are hanging out, is this. That's been running for how long like that? Okay, so that's going to go forward like that. That's going to go forward like that. And that is going to face forward. So I'm just going to put that out the way in the orientation that it lives in. There's a screw under here that's got to come out. And there's a screw here that, oh, it's got gunk over it. Okay. That also here needs to come out. That should allow us to remove the top. But it should do, apart from the fact that this is being a little bit of a swine and doesn't want to come off. It seems very, very, very tight. So I'm going to just work it. And potentially just get a little bit of pressure behind it. Come on. That's the one. Just get that central. And obviously this machine has not had this cover off for a significant period of time. I'm not out totally, but yeah, that was our problem. And we're in. Definitely 100% needs a clean. Okay, this bottom cover's come off, and it's come off with these two bits come separate, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful about putting that back together. There's a felt cover here. Now I suspect that is one of the parts that is in our kit. Let's just have a quick look. Oh yes, that's that felt kit, that felt bit there. So I'm not going to keep that. As you can see, it is rather rancid. We'll take that off there. Off comes the belt. There's the top of the motor. So there you go. Look, you can see how that works. We're going to take this gearbox off here, and then we're going to disassemble this gearbox and give it a good clean. I'm going to drop the motor out here, which will then let us get to it to put brushes on. So we'll start by doing that as our next step. Well, I have to say, I was actually expecting a little bit of an argument from that. So obviously, again, this is something that over the eons has worked itself loose. So let's take that off there. Come on, out you come. Now, what we've got to be careful with when we stand this up now, let go, is that the motor unit doesn't end up falling everywhere. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this round, let that come down like that. Then I'm hoping the motor comes out. There we go. One motor unit. So we'll have a look at doing the brushes on that in a second. I'll put that out of the way for a minute. Okay, so there's a piece of plastic in the top there. We'll take that out of there. This piece here came right off the top, and it actually says in the instructions that you can drill holes through this gear, but as you can see, there's not any need to do it. So we're going to remove this pulley here. What I've done, I've put a screwdriver across there and literally just hold it in place, and that pulley comes out, actually really well behaved, and that will then allow us to dismantle the gearbox assembly once it's off. Anybody that's interested, the belt that's come out is this. It is a 60704. So what I'm going to do now is just take off this from here, back and from here, and my belief is that this will separate the mixing assembly from the motor assembly. Let's find out. Okay, so all of that lot there we can take away and give it a good clean. While everything else is being cleaned, let's take this off. They're held on with two little plastic clips there and there. Then there's two screws, one here, one here. Okay, there's quite a lot of spring tension on that, which is, I suppose, what you expect from a brush. Just take that out of there, and there's the carbon. See how much wear it's got on it. Honestly, they're not actually in bad condition. Well, this one's not, but whilst the machine is stripped to this level and having a brand new set available, there's some wear on them, obviously, but okay, so it goes. They only go one way. When you put them in the one way, they're really tight. There's a bit of an FYI there. Okay, I'm just going to sort of hold that over there in place. I'm not going to tighten them up all the way with this. I've just put them in. I'm going to go back to a hand screwdriver to do that. Because as good as that little tool is, I don't really want it on impact mode on something this old. Okay, that's one side. Rinse and repeat. Brush out, still in reasonable condition. New one in. Just need to get that to sit under there, and then just put that back in place. Okay. Tighten them up by hand. We'll put the little cover back on. Click that back together, and that's it. There we go. That is the entire Kenwood motor assembly. Gearbox time. I've took this off rather than trying to drill holes in it. Now, I'm using the impact driver on this because I consider it to be less risk to the screws to have a quick sharp shock to come apart than to try and remove them slowly. But I'll be honest, that's just come apart really nice. Now, there's a gap here. I'm going to sort of use that to get in under here. There's another one here. Not so gap wise as far as getting into it, but okay, we're under. According to the Kenwood instructions, this should just come apart, and it says try not to lose the washers. Ooh. I am incredibly pleased that I chose to put something down underneath me. Next up, going to take this off here. All I'm going to do is just put that against there like that, and just remove that. Now there's some gears in here that it warns about losing, but we'll be careful. Okay, so there's a washer under there. We need to be mindful of that. Let's put that there. Now this in here is greased with a food-based grease, whereas the other grease is just a normal engine grease. But that should now allow me to take that other cog out of there, like that, and we can continue cleaning it. So I'm going to go back to cleaning this, and I'll come back in a minute when it's all cleaned. So now we've got the gearbox into its constituent parts. It says we don't really need to worry about cleaning it all up, but I'm kind of looking at this grease. This grease is a lot thicker than what's actually in here. So I'm kind of thinking that because of the age of the machine, you know, it's an 80s machine, it's probably, what, 40 years old. The grease has actually started to break down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give everything a clean with some alcohol or something like that, just to try and clean it up. And then come back and we'll put it back together. So I'm just going to carry on giving it a bit more of a clean, and then we'll go through the important part. What I will say is, as I've took this apart, there's 4 small washers and 1 large washer that have come out, and there may be a little plastic washer on the bottom of that shaft there. So let's get back to it, and I'll be back with you in a minute. Let's take you through putting this back together. Seems to be the most sensible thing to do here. Now there's quite a few washers in here. Now the thing it says is to put some grease underneath and to cut the corner of the container off. So let's try and make a grease dispenser. Now, first of all, what I'm going to say, this stuff is like properly thick compared to what I've took out. So that's a good thing, because it does indicate that the grease that we've just removed was at the end of its service life, or has it's exceeded it. So I'm just going to put a little bit around there and just make sure that we get a smear on the shaft here before putting it back together. The big thing I want to make sure is that the wheel gets lubricated. So that's gone into there. We don't need that one. I can't remember which way around these cogs went. I think that one went there, which would mean that one went in first. Down the bottom. No, it doesn't. So does that one go in there? Yeah, that seems to give a drive. I did have a picture of how it went together, but I don't want to go messing. So each of these has a washer underneath them, like so. I'm going to put some more grease under here. So we discovered that that went there and made a gap, and that one went in there like that. And we know through experience that this one here is the main drive, so that one goes in here. I'm just going to sort of try and push the grease over the top of things. Now that should give me a drive through from the one end to the other, if I've assembled it right. And I have. So there we go. Okay, let's move on to the top part. We've got to put the gear back into here that we've took out, which is this cog here. Again, I'm just going to put some grease on there. This is an accessory drive, and it says it wants me to put the rest of the grease in the top. So I'm going to put one on there, one on there, and I'm going to put a good gunking of grease in that, a good gunking of grease around here. Well, if you're the person that uses the KENWOOD Chef, that you'll be quite good with this, because it's like icing a cake with some really weird black dark coloured icing. Now, there we go. I do feel as though I put considerably more grease in it than I've took out. But that's by the by. Now, one thing that I do know I'm going to have to do is grease the sides. But what I want to do is just sort of make sure that everything goes together. Squidge it in, squidge it out. So now I can put some sealant around the edges and get some of the excess glunks of grease and try and push them into the actual gaps so that they'll run round in the gearbox rather than get in the way. Now, the one thing I find strange with this is this has come with some silicone sealer, but here's the thing. When I took this gearbox apart, I was picking chunks of silicone out of it everywhere. And I'm a little dubious to go putting the silicone sealer back into the machine, because I think I'm getting myself into more of a problem than I'm solving. Now, there's the washer. I'm just checking the washer's on there, which it is. So I'm going to put this together, and I'm not going to put any extra sealer on it because I'm not entirely convinced it needs it. So let's give it a try. So yeah, I've decided not to put any sealer in this because when I took it apart, whilst there was sealer in it, the amount of sealer actually between the two parts of the aluminium was that minimal. Because there was more actual grease, there was more sealer had come out of both sides and into the gearbox than actually anywhere of any help. Now, the other thing I find interesting is in KENWOOD's instructions that have come with this, they don't talk about putting sealer in it. So just put these together nice and tight. Okay, I'm going to give the outside of this a good clean with some alcohol, and I'm going to throw this piece of plastic away. Okay, so we've got the gearbox back together. Just going to check everything's tight. I was very dubious with it being aluminium into aluminium with a steel screw. Next thing to do is we'll put this together. So first thing I'm going to do is get some blue wipe and give the inside of here a clean out to make sure there's none of the non-food grade grease in here. Of course, you wouldn't want non-food grade grease in your food, would you? couple of these cockpits here are a little bit cruddier than others. Okay, so this assembly goes back onto here. Just literally giving anything and everything I can a bit of a clean off. So this will go back onto here. That gives the planetary drive that drives the beat around at a different speed. So again, I'm going to cut the corner off this container. See if I can get this to sit. In a manner that I've got a chance of being able to do this. So all I'm going to do with this is just put it round the outside. Just sort of working on the theory that as soon as it's turned on, it'll mix everything round and put it where it wants it. But I have managed to get everything out of there into there. So this goes back on here like that. There's a little, what's it there? Just make sure that goes into there. That goes on there. And then that tightens back up onto there, and that's the gearbox reassembled. I'm going to get me a spanner and just tighten that up now. There we go. As you can see, the grease is working its way out. It'll do that once we turn the machine on. So, next thing I'm going to do is put the motor back into the machine. Then, oh, hang on. Before we do that, we need to put this little assembly back on here. This is the plunger that stops you taking the, well, allows you to take the accessory off the side here. That just goes in through there like so. Very, very, very tight that is. I wonder if we can get any of this remaining food-based grease on here, because I don't know whether this should be food-based or not, so just in case. Oh, that's made a world of difference. Just a small amount of grease on there. That's going to go around the back there, and this will hook over kind of assuming there's a hole there somewhere. I don't know, that doesn't quite feel right to me. I'm just going to go and watch back on the video how that was assembled and come back. Just had a little look at the video and it's hooked over the end. Like that. Okay, that's that mechanism back in place. We'll get the KENWOOD back on here now and start putting that back together. So I've got this back, it's considerably cleaner. First things first I want to do is put the drive unit back in. So I'm going to feed that up through there like that, so that then from the top we can put the those little plastic accessories in that are in here, followed by a screw. Okay, there we go. Shut that down for a second, and I'm just going to pull this up. I'm not going to tighten it up because this is part of how we adjust the tension of the belt. Yeah, that goes there. Okay, that's fine. So that's the motor assembly back in. So the next thing we need to do realistically is put the gearbox assembly back onto this. That's going to be held on by 2 bolts. Now, it's also got 2 little studs here. So let's have the gearbox assembly back, please. So that's going to go on like that. And then we're going to put these 2 bolts back in here. All of a sudden it makes the machine a little bit more assemblable. There's actually a black trim that goes underneath here that I've missed. So I'm going to need that black trim before I go any further. Right, so I've got the black trim here. I'm not entirely sure which way round that went. I think it's going to go that way and tuck under the gearbox. That's the only thing that makes sense, is that it went like that. And then the gearbox went on top of it like that. Okay, that does make sense, and that sits in place and that notch lines up, so let's go with that. There we go. Gotta absolutely banjo these up. Okay, next up, I'm going to go and wash my hands because I've got grease on me. So, as the acute paying attention people among you might have noticed, I forgot to put this on top of the motor. It sits just in here, so I'm going to whip this motor back off. Fortunately, look, it's tight. Oh, as a bonus, I've dropped the screw in. It's inside the motor. So, yeah. Okay. I think it went that way round. Obviously. Yeah, this is going to be a laugh. Just to try and get that to stay in place. Right, so it comes up into place here as the motor comes into place. So I think what I'm going to do, as you can see here, is just as the motor comes up, turn it round, and then that way it's back in line. Now, if this is the right way round, These little plastic things will go in quite easily. I'm not 100%. I felt that way. That took quite a bit of effort to actually get that back into there. So I'm not convinced I put that in the right way. Yeah. Part A and part B are really quite stuck together here. So I think I've made a mistake. And just sort of push that apart. Okay, so it's this side facing up because it goes in there, look, no problem. But from that side it's too tight, so it's got to be that way round. So that'll sit on top of the motor, and you know what, that's gone onto the motor a bit tighter. It's probably still going to fall off. It's fallen off in style. I believe that's in place. That's better. So put that one there and that one there. So that one can go in there like that. I'm not tightening it right up. As I've said before, I think this is about part of the belt tightening mechanism, and I've also missed, oh yeah, the screw that came out went into there, didn't it? So yeah, there we go. So let's just put them in. Just touch tight, look. No. Because I think that's going to allow adjustment. Okay. Next up is this. This goes back on here. Now, obviously there's a part that goes onto here. To stop oil, etc. splashing down. But the problem I've got at the moment is that wants to sit there, but there were some spaces that were missing from here that were actually damaged. You see the damage around here. So I'm just wondering how I can go about ensuring that sits in the right place. I've got the piece from here, so I think, yeah, I mean, look at that. There's no, absolutely no chances there. So I think, because these are both pulled out, I need to put some washers on the outside of this to hold this in place, and then probably just put these back in place. So give me a moment, I'll find some washers. Okay, I'm going for a couple of washers, a tiny one and a slightly larger one, because I don't have one that just does everything together. Prior to that, I need to put this nappy in place. This just goes up there. Hang on. Okay, here's the nappy under here. Let's feed that into there. I believe its job is to stop the non-food grease mixing with the with what you're making, is my understanding. Okay, so that's going to go right up there. My bolts aren't long enough, unfortunately, to do what I'm trying to do here. So that being said, can I put something in that's a little bit longer? Okay, I found a couple of alternative screws. Hopefully they will actually grab into there. Feels like they are. Okay, that's brilliant. Not perfect, but they're going to hold the machine back together. Ideally, I suppose you get a replacement part for it. But to be fair, that's back level, it's back in the right place. So the next thing we need to do is to put this cog on and put the belt on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the washer for the cog and just check how the instructions tell me to tension the belt. So we've got a washer that goes on here, then we get this cog, and literally all we're going to do with it is tighten it up. Because once it's tight, it drives the Kenwood mixer. So there's actually nothing that it will actually finish itself off tightening as soon as you turn the machine on. So let's have a look at putting this here belt on. Oh, that feels tight. That is too tight. So let's take some tension off that. So I'm going to push that forward and tighten it back up again. This time I'm going to give it a click click because I'm kind of confident that that will do the job for me. Now it says that is too loose, look. So let's just do that. There we are. A little bit of pinch in it. That's going to drive that quite nicely onto there. So the last piece that we're going to put back on is this. Hooks on over the front and then back over there. And then it says we need to make sure we put this back on in the right order. Now you can just see the shadow of where that went there. Now, that's better. It's coming back together quite nicely. With that cover back on there. And I just turn this round and see if this cover now will come on and go off, because it wouldn't before. Not perfect, but it does at least come off. That goes back onto that. So that is the top of the Kenwood Chef reassembled. So the next thing we need to do is go back under here and put the bottom cover on here and then a replacement power cable. The bottom cover is held on by the latching assembly, and we can put the mains cable on from underneath without them once it's back together. So let's do that. Now I've just lifted this back apart because I realised I missed that little seal off there, which of course is going to be a drip seal. So I put that back in place. Okay, so it's gone a little bit dark. Today's been one of those days where the sun has been coming up and down. So what I'm going to do is put these back into this connector here. Then make sure that's tucked in at the back over the top of the springs. Right, so to put the spring in, we've got to move, sorry, the circlip. The spring has got to be moved across here, out of the way. Without dropping the darn thing on your fingers. Okay, there we go, look. So then we can put this spring clip into this groove here. And push it back into place. There is down, up. Okay, I'm going to just give this a little clean off on here with a bit of spray and a bit of blue roll, because I've got some black on there. Let's give that a wipe under here, and you see it's all looking far more appropriate. So the final thing we need to do with this is to put a mains cable on it. Let me find one. Before we do a mains cable, the kit comes with a set of new feet. So I'm going to do one with you. You sort of got to work it out. And dig it out like that. I'll be honest, the first one I took out came out easier. Wonder if I can get under that there. Yeah, there we go. So that worked quite well. And then just refit some brand spanking new feet to it. And I'll do the same with the two back ones in a second. Right, I've got a new mains cable here. So what I'm going to do is sort of just measure off the amount of wire that was on here originally. Tighten the clamp down. And strip the end of that. Okay. And there we go. You know, these things weren't made when there was a right to repair. They were made when it was expected that you were going to repair your product. I mean, they were a lot of money. I understand that they were a considerable investment. The final thing we've got to check is that doesn't go tight. Okay, let's put this the right way around and do a final test on it. Okay, plugged it in. And that's it. That's how to fix one of these and do a full service. Oh, one last thing. put that back on there. And there we go. That is a Kenwood Chef back to life. And the truth of the matter is that'll probably work for another 40 years because they are designed to be repaired, they're manufactured to be repaired, and as you've seen in this video, they are a pretty straightforward thing. And there we go, an A901 Kenwood Chef Restore, using genuine accessories for Kenwood. Well, thank you for watching this. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope if you got one of these, it gives you the confidence to take it apart and bring yours back to life. And do me a favour, hit the subscribe, etc. please, it does help me. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye bye.